The White House response to the riots in LA and the failed leadership of Gavin Newsom. White House Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields breaks it down in under 60 seconds.
Well, the federal response is to restore order to the streets of one of America's largest cities, the city of Los Angeles, that absent leadership from the state and the local leaders, who are really just leaders in name only. This president, who was elected with a mandate to restore law and order, to secure the border, and to make America safe again, is taking decisive legal action to quell some of the chaos and to protect the federal assets on the ground. That's all he is doing.
All right, guys, good Tuesday to you. What a show we've got coming your way. First, Harrison Fields, White House Deputy Press Secretary, is going to give us a complete breakdown of where we are on the response to the LA riots and Gavin Newsom. It's insane where we are right now. And then Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, is going to talk to us about actually some of the stuff that's happening in LA and what they're doing to dismantle the Department of Education, get those assets sent back to the states, closer to the people. So buckle up. This is going to be an amazing, amazing conversation. But I just kind of want to start with like a scene setter on where we are. Because you think about this, like on Friday, we're all like on pins and needles about like Elon and where we would go. And then I get this news about Abrego Garcia. I mean, like it shifted so quick. And I kind of touched on this a little yesterday, but this is so self-inflicted. The idea that you're siding with a bunch of people that are waving Mexican flags, throwing rocks at federal agents and destroying federal property, vandalizing it, is insane. You got the Terry Moran thing. I mean, the dynamic in 48 hours switched it's like Elon who? So here's where we are right now. President Trump initially said, I'm sending in 2,000 National Guard. He upped it to another 2,000, now 4,000. And now the Marines, they got like 700 of them that are coming in. And these guys are defending federal assets. Remember this. You guys heard me say this yesterday. This is important. All of these folks in the media and the left are like, this is unprecedented. This isn't what's happened. Well, first of all, it is, because they did this back during the civil rights. But I think it's even more, yes, it is unprecedented. We've never seen people attack federal agents and assets the way they are now. I said this yesterday, but again, the media keeps missing this point. The president not only has a responsibility, but dare I say an obligation to defend these lives. If you're a federal agent, you want to know that the president's got your back. That if the law enforcement, the local and state law enforcement is not going to do it, that he does. By sending in these people, he's allowing them to be protected. You saw this last week. What's the guy's name? This director of ICE saying, yeah, my agents, they're wearing masks because people are putting their pictures online and they're attacking their families. The president's protecting these people. That's his job. And he's protecting federal assets. Remember, they always want to talk about like where this all went down. These guys were literally just going to work. They were going to their office, and this Democratic assemblyman starts live streaming. That's how this all went down. The National Guard is as I said, is going there. And what's California's response? We're going to sue him. We're going to sue him. And by the way, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about the wildfires that happened when Karen Bass, the fire chief, talked about the cuts. Remember that Karen Bass had made to the fire department and what happened to her, the fire chief, when she said the truth out loud. So that when you hear the police chief talk, in the back of your mind, remember, he has seen the movie. He knows what's happening. So California is now suing Trump. Instead of saying thank you, they filed in federal court in San Francisco, naming President Trump, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and the Department of Defense as defendants, saying he didn't have the authority to send out the Guard. He didn't say it. So it was unbelievable. The White House said in response, it's pathetic that Newsom is more focused on saving face and protecting law enforcement and holding criminals accountable. The Attorney General out there in California, Rob Bonta, called Trump's federalization of the state National Guard troops unnecessary, counterproductive, and most importantly, unlawful. Really? Unlawful, huh? That's what he said. So just to be clear, these guys can attack federal agents and assets, but it's unlawful if the president responds. Here's Gavin Newsom's response to the president, by the way. Take a listen.
I mean, it's, again, sober and serious moment. Meanwhile, can I just add, and this is why I told the president, just get it over with. Arrest me. Move on. If you need some head to scalp, do it with me, but stop messing with these kids. Stop messing with 4-year-olds. kids in elementary school. We've got kids. We have hundreds of graduations down here. Kids are not going to their own graduations, families, grandparents.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. I mean, my God, this isn't about kids. Cut it out. Stop gaslighting us, you moron. You think we can't watch for our own eyes? They're waving Mexican flags, burning cars, and don't pretend, it's about kids. Give me a break. And remember, the president campaign was elected on fixing this problem. This is unbelievable. And this whole city is being looted. Apple stores? You got to be kidding me. What is going and breaking and looting an Apple store have to do with this? That has nothing to do with ICE. Remember, this is Gavin Newsom before the 2024 election. He told Republicans to send in the National Guard. Take a look.
We're back down here at the border, Tijuana, right behind me, San Diego sector. This is the San Ysidro port of entry, not too far away, which is the largest in the Western Hemisphere. And we were just down here with the National Guard, meeting with customs agents as well as Border Patrol, talking about our partnerships. 390 National Guardsmen and women that have been working, particularly as it relates to fentanyl here in the state of California. Look at the bottom line. At the end of the day, they need more resources. Everybody needs more resources. And the Republican Party has been consistently standing in the way of providing the resources, the support for the men and women working hard, not only here at the border, but out throughout the state of California and this country to address the issues related to the border. It's time for them to stop playing politics. It's time for the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, to stop playing politics and do the right thing.
Do the right thing. We did, you moron, and then you sued him. Unbelievable. And by the way, you don't take my word on it, right? I don't live in California. How about the chief of police in LA? Here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
The federal authorities have the right to be able to do what they're doing. As far as people worried about the violence that we're seeing, this violence that I've seen is disgusting. It's escalated now since the beginning of this incident. What we saw the first night was bad. What we've seen subsequent to that is getting increasingly worse and more violent. Tonight we had individuals out there shooting commercial-grade fireworks at our officers. That can kill you. And we have adapted our tactics to be able to have a chance to be able to take these people into custody and to be able to hold them accountable. We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers, to throw at cars, and throw at other people. We've seen people with hammers, and you've broadcasted, breaking the bollards behind the federal building and taking the rocks, if you will, or pieces of concrete, and throwing them at officers. We've had liquid of who knows what description thrown at officers. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers.
No limit to what they're doing. We're overwhelmed. Do you hear that? Not me. Not some Republican lawmaker, not the White House. That's the chief of police in LA. He went on, though, because you got to hear this. He was asked, do we need them? This is how he responded.
You just described some pretty violent and chaotic situations. What is your position on the National Guard being deployed? Do we need them here?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I would have said that, we could handle this. I believe that we would have gone through a number of steps before we'd have deployed the National Guard or requested deployment of the National Guard. We would normally go to 50% deployment to handle radio calls and do the business of policing, and everybody else would be focused on the initial problem. Beyond that, then we would request through the sheriff mutual aid, and that would bring in members of the 44 other police departments in LA County as well as the sheriff's office. And so that didn't occur in this case because it wasn't done through the sheriff or through up through the normal chain. It was done from the top down, from the president directing that happened, and then the National Guard was federalized. So they're working for the U.S. Army, not for the California State National Guard.
Do we need them?
Do we need them? Well, looking at it tonight, this thing has gotten out of control. Before I could answer that, I'd have to know more about what their capabilities are, what their role is intended to be.
Do we need them? This has gotten out of control. That's what he said. This has gotten out of control. I cannot believe the mayor and the governor have the audacity to respond to the president the way that they did after their own police chief said this has gotten out of control. Do you know how out of control it's gotten, by the way? There's a reporter in LA, Alex Michelson, who tweeted this out. We just saw people arriving in downtown LA with truckloads of bionic face shields. The demonstrators quickly grabbed. It certainly seems like gear you'd wear if you are preparing for conflict with police. Who is funding that? He's a longtime reporter out there. I went and did a Google search on this. They're about $30 or $40 a pop. Take a look at this on the screen right here. This isn't like one dude with a mask. These are $40 a pop, and they're handing them out willy-nilly. Somebody's funding this. Follow the money, for goodness sakes. That's what's happening. All right, as I said, two great guests. Harrison Fields, Deputy White House Press Secretary, is going to join us in a second and give us a breakdown as far as what the panel, what the response is going to be to this in LA. And then we're going to bring on Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Obviously, this week, big week, Cheryl Atkinson, award-winning journalist, Newt Gingrich, and an amazing panel with Batya Ungar-Sargon, Caroline Downey of the National Review, and our buddy Tony Katz out there in Indianapolis. Before I get to Harrison Fields, though, you guys know this. Every night, I've made this part of my wellness routine. The key to wellness is sleep. And I have tried and added in Beams Dream Powder every single night. I am so excited to share this with you guys because it has made a real difference in my life. It is proudly founded in America, run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and delivering. We voted in November. Vote with your wallet now. Get a great product, but one that really helps you with wellness. It is science-backed. It's healthy nighttime blend. Has all the stuff that you've tried in a pill before, whether it's magnesium, melatonin, reishi, apigenin, L-theanine. It's all in. And I'm telling you, this week, I've been using the brownie flavor. I do have a brand new one of the cocoa cinnamon, which is, I think you guys know, is my favorite. But I had opened the brownie one, and I was like, I gotta finish it because that's how I roll. You got to finish before you open a new one. I still love that one. But I'm telling you, 30 minutes before I go to bed, one scoop, 30, 40 seconds in the microwave. And I'm telling you, I get the best night's sleep when I have it. And occasionally, if I'm traveling and I miss it, I don't feel the same. I wake up rip-roaring ready to go. This is a key to getting your energy back. And I'm not the only one. 17.5 million nights sleep have been improved. Every day, folks, athletes, professionals. I love this stuff. Here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the Ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off of the best. And it doesn't matter which flavor. You know where I come down on flavors, cocoa cinnamon. But you can try any of the flavors. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for 40% off. That's the deal of the century. No tariffs. No tariffs here. Support a great American company. Invest in yourself and stop getting a better night's sleep. All right. You guys know this. It is the 250th anniversary of the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps this year. We are celebrating the country and all this stuff. Tax Network USA, by the way, is proudly celebrating our nation's birthday as well, honoring freedom, resilience, financial independence. And they're offering 10% off of all of their services if you touch base with them before July 4th. So if you've got back taxes or unfiled taxes and you missed the April 15th deadline, you've heard me say this before, there is still help available. These guys are the best in the business. Never, ever, ever try to go up against the government by yourself. And the cool thing about Tax Network USA is it's absolutely 100% free to give them a call. Walk them through their situation. These guys literally know exactly how to deal with everything. They've recovered over $1 billion for their clients. Whether you owe $5,000 or $5 million, these guys have a preferred direct line to the IRS. They know exactly who to talk to and who to stay away from. But these will give you the help that you need. There is still time. Do not just keep putting it off. Pick up the phone, give them a call, 1-800-958-1000. So you don't need to wait until they garnish your wages and get the harassing calls. Do it right now. Better yet, go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All one word, no spaces. TNUSA. And remember, you get 10% off all services through July 4th as part of their birthday celebration. Regain control of your finances. Call an expert at Tax Network USA. It's absolutely free. TNUSA.com/Sean Spicer. All right, I want to introduce my first guest, Deputy White House Press Secretary Harrison Fields. Harrison Fields, thanks for coming back and joining us. Let's just start off with this. Describe what the federal response is to what's happening in LA.
Well, the federal response is to restore order to the streets of one of America's largest cities, the city of Los Angeles, that absent leadership from the state and the local leaders, who are really just leaders in name only. This president, who was elected with a mandate to restore law and order, to secure the border, and to make America safe again, is taking decisive legal action to quell some of the chaos and to protect the federal assets on the ground. That's all he is doing.
God, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to say this to the team. After the show, let's trademark Linos, leaders in name only. I'm going to give Harrison, he's unfortunately in government, so I'll have to save his cut. But Harrison, I think you're the first person that has said this. Thank you for mentioning the federal assets. President Trump not only has a responsibility, but I dare say an obligation, I sound like Stephen Miller, to guard the lives and assets the federal government owns, right? So these lives, that he doesn't own the lives. But in other words, this isn't just him going in because there's a library in downtown LA that's under attack or a park. People are attacking ICE agents. They are attacking property of the federal government. And I argue that President Trump has a responsibility to protect it. And you're the first person that I've heard, at least, say that. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I said it here first. But the reality is this is what he's doing. I mean, we cannot have our federal law enforcement agents, our brave men and women of ICE, endure the level of trauma that they're seeing. I mean, these people are getting battered and bloodied in the face of a hostile mob, some of which are not even American citizens. And then we have federal buildings that are also facing tremendous pressure. And we have a president now that is calling in the Marines, our National Guard, to protect the federal assets. And by doing so, you're going to see a level of restoration to order. But this is only possible because we have a president that's willing to act. And you also have leaders in the state that could have done this themselves. But they want to bow down to the radical leftist mob because Gavin Newsom, he's running for president. This is the trampoline to his presidential campaign. He understands the only way to potentially win a primary in his state and probably nationally is to stick it to President Trump, which is a disaster because the people in Paramount, the everyday men and women that are going to work, trying to make a living for their families, they don't want this chaos in the streets. They probably voted for the president because they want it to end. And the last thing I'll say on this is the president received 2 million more votes in California, historic level of support in California for this president. Californians are tired of the nightmare that they've been living in. They came to California for the California dream, and it's been an absolute nightmare under the Democrats.
I just, Harrison, I've said this before, but when I grew up, in getting into campaigns, it was we're for lower government, less taxes. These guys are now literally siding with criminals. They're waving Mexican flags. They're saying F ICE. They're hitting, they're just burning cars, throwing rocks at agents. They're frankly, here's the kicker, by the way, they're throwing stuff at reporters. The idea that the media is not even trying to protect their own is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the reporters and whoever really is there is going to be collateral damage. These people have one sole focus, and that is to destroy the federal government and to destroy the fundamentals of what this president is trying to achieve. The American people voted for deportations. A record number of Latinos voted for deportations. A lot of the men and women of ICE that are tasked with this mandate from the president are also of Latino or Hispanic heritage. So we need to establish order. This is what this president is doing. We have absent leadership in the state and the local government, but this shouldn't be a surprise. We saw their leadership or lack thereof when the wildfires came. The mayor was in Africa when her city was burning down to celebrate some party in Nigeria. This is the type of failed leadership the city of Los Angeles is dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, look, the reality, though, is that this is the narrative in the media is, or from the left and those false elected leaders, is that President Trump's trying to escalate. The bottom line, if you look at the TikTok, is it was a Democrat assemblyman who went live on Instagram and tried to stream people and encouraged a crowd to gather in that lot in Paramount to then attack unprovoked, without evidence, as the left likes to say, these ICE agents who were merely showing up for work.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And they got it so wrong because they happen to be next to a Home Depot, but that's where the ICE facility is.
Right.
So they're completely wrong. Like the whole genesis of this riot is based off a false premise. And the Democrats who are continuing to say, get in the streets and protest. You had the senator 2 days ago from California, Padilla, basically encourage more protests. This is who they are. Maxine Waters, she already proved it years ago, back when you were in the White House. Get in their faces.
Yeah.
You know, do the rest of it. This is who they want. They want anarchy. This is who they are. And this president is not going to stand for it.
So you mentioned the Marines, and I think a lot of the LAPD was saying, well, we're not coordinating with them. Are you guys so if you're setting in, whether it's the National Guard or the Marines, what kind of coordination is happening with California law enforcement, with LA police or sheriff to ensure that that the Marines are working hand in hand with those guys, or not?
Well, there's always going to be a level of coordination between federal assets and state and local assets. The police chief himself said that this situation is not sustainable and basically was looking for help because he can't have a city that's in anarchy the way it's been. So the Marines are going to come in and they know exactly how to deal with this type of situation. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was on Capitol Hill. He talked to the level of expertise that these men and women are going to be able to have, and they're going to be working to, again, protect federal assets. These are not some stormtroopers that are here to arrest people or to do any of the crazy things that the Democrats are speculating. Within the president's legal authority in the statute that was signed, they're just here to protect federal assets, and by doing so, you're going to quell some of the danger. But again, the governor and the mayor can do something about it. They could have done something about this on Friday when these riots were starting, and they would have rather watched their city burn down. A similar thing Tim Walz did. His wife opened the windows of the governor's mansion so she can take in the smell of burning Michelin tires. These people are insane, and this president, elected on that massive mandate, is doing exactly what the American people want. This is bad politics for the Democrats, and the Democrats know it too.
Oh, it's stupid politics. It's not, I mean, it's beyond bad. I mean, this is literally like, how can we dig ourselves deeper? But I don't want to dwell on this, but it is a talking point of the left, and I just want to make sure I follow up to get clarity on this. The Marines, federal assets, the National Guard have an absolute 100% right and obligation to defend federal assets. I'm 100%, as you know, on board on that. That's their job. The left is trying to make the case, though, not just the left. The LA police chief put out a statement saying that he's not aware. Is there an actual attempt to make sure that they connect the dots and to say, we got our stuff, you got your stuff, but just so you know, this is what we're doing, whether it's coordination or just awareness? Is the federal government making sure that the local police understand what the Marine Corps and National Guard will be doing?
My understanding is that the Department of Defense and their execution of this operational mission will, of course, speak to their local and state counterparts to make sure that this mission is done so in an appropriate and effective way. Now, what I can do is go back to our DoD counterparts and mention that there is some need for clarity there, and I'm happy to get that for you. But my understanding is that the DoD, working in coordination with DHS, also state and local leaders, will put forward plan and work together, because at the end of the day, it's not just the federal people on the ground. It's the heroes in blue, the men and women of the LAPD that are facing the same level of threats because their mayor would rather appease the radical left than the people that have been swearing an oath to protect and serve their community. It's absolutely devastating. If you talk to the men and women of the LAPD and the LA Fire Department, they will tell you that their leadership is absent. They feel like they are not represented. And that's a devastating reality that far too many of our heroes, in particularly blue cities and states, face every day, which is why they're moving back to my home state of Florida, where we always black the blue.
You do. I agree. I mean, look, people who become cops in particular do it because they have a desire to want to serve and protect. And the last thing they need is feckless leadership at the top that doesn't support them or frankly allow them to do their job. So I get it. And my only point in bringing this up is that, like everything else, the left always focuses on the process. Like, so they go defend Abrego Garcia and say, oh, it's just about the process. And so my point in this is just, if we can button up the process, don't give them an excuse. Get focused, because President Trump is clearly winning this issue, both on the policy and on the politics. And I just don't want to give them the process piece to say, oh, well, they just didn't call us first, that because they didn't do their job and give them an out when they failed to show leadership.
Yeah, and I hear your point, and I take it. And one thing too, if the American people, if they hear the governor, if you're a resident of California, and the only thing that the governor is talking about is issues with the process, meanwhile your local CVS or the car in the middle of the thoroughfare which you drive is now on fire, and you can't get to work on time, you don't care about process. You want to know where the police are, the same police that the Democratic Party try to defund. So the American people see through a lot of this process stuff. They want to know what is getting done to protect my community and protect my family. And the only person that's answered that question is the President of the United States, because he is there trying to make sure that there's some semblance of order when he's working with a mayor and a governor that doesn't want to play ball. They would rather see their city lit ablaze.
It's worse than that, Harrison. They're suing him. They literally, instead of stepping up and say, gosh, my bad, like we should do our job, they're literally going to sue him. And Gavin Newsom's putting out a statement from all the other Democratic governors around the country saying they stand with him. Gavin Newsom, by the way, at the beginning of 2024, before President Trump office, said we need the National Guard. Like, he's suing President Trump because he's not doing his job.
Yeah, and Stephen Miller had an amazing response to Gavin Newsom, and he's basically just called him out on the litany of failed policies that this governor has presided over. His state is a sanctuary to millions of illegal immigrants, some of whom are dangerous criminals just running their street. It's a cesspool for homelessness. It's absolutely outrageous to live. No one can live in California. You can't afford a house. You can't afford gas. The taxes are incredible. The energy, you have brownouts and blackouts. It's absolutely insane. They want to get rid of gas-powered cars in favor of electric cars. California is a mess. No one wants to live there anymore. And it's a devastating reality because it's probably our nicest state. And the failed leadership of Democrats has just completely driven the state into the ground. And the president wants to restore California to its beauty and its majesty. We've got to make California great again.
It takes a lot for a guy from Florida to say that. Before I let you go, I want to just pivot to one other subject that you tweeted about yesterday, and the media is literally melting down because Bobby Kennedy dismissed all the people on this vaccine panel because he thought they were conflicted. There was too much money, too much conflict of interest. And so he dismissed this vaccine board at the Department of Health and Human Services. You tweeted out Secretary Kennedy's decisive action to overhaul the ACIP restores integrity to vaccine policy. The left's politicalization of science during COVID-19, coupled with the failures of so-called expert, opened America's eyes to systematic flaws. A new panel will rebuild trust, eliminate conflicts of interest, and prioritize public health with fresh perspective. How important is what Bobby Kennedy did yesterday to the overall public health?
It's so important because one of the things we're facing is that the American people just do not trust the science community. We've looked at these people and had such revere towards them. Meanwhile, they were feeding us lies, and little did we know they would give us advice, but in their back pocket, Big Pharma was funding them. So we cannot have conflicted experts on panels to tell me, as the father of an 8-month-old, how many vaccines I should be giving my daughter. My wife and I are going through this right now. We're looking for sound science, and the science just isn't there in our opinion. And we finally have a Secretary of Health and Human Services that is talking to parents like my wife and I that says, hey, a lot of these scientists are conflicted. The Faucis of the world should not be telling you when you should mask up your child or that COVID somehow is going to take them out. We've had so much politicization of science. We just need to get back to the basics, and we are going to restore science for what it is, which is so important. But so many people have taken advantage of their degree, of their level of trust that the American people had in them, and RFK is calling them out. And thank God he's doing so, because this is a commitment of the president. This is also a lot of suburban moms and dads are looking at this. When you look at food dye, trying to make America healthy again, trying to get rid of chronic disease in our country, this is all, like, these are 90-10 issues. These were liberal propositions before RFK and the president were elected. So I'm happy to see it. Kudos to our Secretary of HHS. This is not a controversial proposition. We need to get non-conflicted people on this board who are not going to sell out to Big Pharma and sell out our children.
Hooray. Hey, last question for you. I don't mean to keep you, but big, beautiful bill. You guys still feel really good about where it is in the timeline?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're going to be cautiously optimistic. Anything on Capitol Hill is never a for sure thing. I would never bet on Capitol Hill. I would always bet on, this president. But the reality is we're working as hard as we can possibly do to get this bill across the finish line. Caroline Levitt was on Capitol Hill today to talk to Republicans and say, hey, guys, this bill is everything you guys campaigned on in one big, beautiful bill. Tax cuts. You talk about what's happening in California. We're going to give ICE raises. We're going to make sure that we're giving them the tools that they need to make sure that our border is secure. MAGA accounts for children. Our next child will have $1,000 deposited into their bank account. And then when they're 25 years old, they're going to have thousands of dollars of seed money to go into the world and make something of it. This bill is so good. It's everything the president championed on the campaign trail. Why any Republican would sit back and try to deny the president his agenda. It's so frustrating to see, but I think we're going to come around. We've got an amazing team shepherding this bill across the finish line, and I do think you'll see one big, beautiful bill signed in the next couple of weeks.
That's what I like to hear. Harrison Fields, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Good to see you, my friend.
All right. What a great conversation with Harrison. Now I want to bring in another great patriot, my friend, my former boss, the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Secretary McMahon, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Sean, for having me this morning.
You bet. Listen, just to boil this down, to start our conversation, in 60 seconds or less, what is it that people need to know about how you're dismantling the Department of Education and sending the assets back to the states?
Well, the president's executive order was very clear. He wanted me to start dismantling in accordance with the law, the Department of Education. So that means taking a look at where can the functions of the Department of Education best fit. And that's what we've been doing, as we look at collecting student loans, is that a function that can be handled by Treasury? Title I funding and IDEA funding, which were in place long before there was a Department of Education. Where are students and families best served with those agencies? So we're planning, we're looking at it. We currently are under an injunction now to stop that process, but we're still continuing the planning aspects of it.
For most people, and you just touched on this, they don't understand that we're not talking about not doing certain things. It's where can they be done better, more effectively, more efficiently, right?
Exactly. And I think, what the president's goal is to take the bureaucracy out of education. I've heard people say, oh, he's trying to get rid of education. Well, clearly that's not the case. He wants to raise the level of education. He wants to raise scores. When you think, Sean, we've spent $3 trillion since the Department of Education was first established in 1980, and we've seen test scores continue to decline. We're clearly doing something wrong. We're not servicing our students, and we need to change. And I think we need to reevaluate how education can best be delivered. And I do believe that that's closest to the child, as does the president. With teachers and parents and local superintendents and principals of schools being part of this process and not having it, really dictated by bureaucracy. The federal government only right now contributes about 8 to 10% of the total education budget in each state. So it's not as though everything is, being run from Washington right now anyway, but there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, a lot of regulatory compliance. And if we can get rid of a lot of that, there will be more money that can flow, hopefully, into the states and directly to the students.
It's funny, though, when I think about education and how we run the system, federally, that is, when you're in school, you're graded, right? You get an A through an F. I might have been somewhere in the middle, and that's and if you get like a D or a C, they say, hey, there's going to be another test. Let's see how you improve. That's how we judge students. We figure out, do they need more help, less help? We have a system of grades. That makes a lot of sense. And yet when it comes to the system as a whole, you alluded to this, these testing standards, if we're spending more money and yet we're getting fewer results from our students, and no one seems to look at it, like if this was a student, if we were looking at the education system as a student, we'd say, you need remedial help. We need to do something different. And yet, because it's Washington, we kind of just excuse it.
Well, what has been the practice for so long, the answer is just throw more money at it. And that's clearly not worked. We need to really invest in programs that are going to be very, very beneficial to our students. And what we're seeing, states that are being innovative, that are providing more school choice, more opportunities for parents. Many states are looking at how they are teaching and reverting back to classical education, teaching the science of reading. The state of Mississippi had great results. Louisiana had great results, going back to basics. And I'm seeing a lot of that in charter schools that I visited. Scores are improving. Kids are beginning to learn how to read. Up until the end of the third grade, you're learning how to read. And after third grade, you're reading to learn. And if you cannot master reading, then you're going to really fall behind in learning. And we've seen, reading proficiencies in eighth grade are now at about 30%. That's just incredibly horrible.
Yeah.
That in eighth grade, you can only read proficiently about 30% of the people. And it's just, we have to change that. And so that's what we're encouraging the states to do, providing with tools and best practices. And that's really the obligation of the states, because the Department of Education doesn't teach anyone. We don't set curriculum. We don't hire teachers. We don't buy books. We just are about really trying to guide and be helpful with research and other best practices to help them achieve their goals.
When you look at how kids are learning, who's doing well and who's not, is there a difference either demographically, geographically, or economically?
I think there's always, we've always seen the achievement gap, at least I know I saw it in my state of Connecticut, which it continues to today, that middle class, upper middle class, wealthier communities, we see typically higher scores. But that's why the president is so absolutely focused on school choice. He is saying that no school should be, no student should be trapped in a failing school, one that's not delivering for them. Give them the opportunity to get out, go to another school. Parents are so behind this to make sure that their child has the opportunity for the best education. And that's what the president's directive to education is. It should be more about choice.
One of the things that I keep seeing local school districts around the country, and now even states, is talk about banning cell phones in schools, because there's no question that the phones themselves, social media apps, are a massive distraction, and I think undermine learning and are destructive in a lot of other ways, development-wise. Is there a role, do you think, for the federal government, or should this be done by district, state by state?
I think this is more of an issue that should be handled by the state. I know Congress is talking a lot about it, but governors, there are several governors who are already implementing plans in their states. It's called, bell to bell policy at the schools, so the students don't have their phones in the classroom. I think this is definitely an issue for states or districts to implement.
Do you see, when you talk about the research and all the statistics, like, I feel like one of the stories that we're going to read about in 50 years is the impact that COVID had on learning, and that sort of 3 or 4 year issue where kids were out of the classroom, they lost some social interaction, they didn't learn the way that they were normally accustomed to. Do you guys see any of that?
Surely. I mean, the impact of COVID is still being felt throughout the country, and it's going to take. I heard one stat one time that it was, a generational issue. It's definitely going to take its impact and toll on those students that were, going into middle school or from middle school to high school. They lost social interaction. They lost, the ability to really participate in class. And I think we've definitely seen it. Research has shown that we must now continue to focus and bring back, that learning for those students. But it's really going to take a while.
Yeah, I'm truly worried, not just about but in 20, 30 years, the impact that that's going to have on the whole next generation of Americans, because I don't think we've fully appreciated and realized the damage that was done. And hopefully we've learned the lesson. I know, if I can switch topics, LA and California are in the news for a completely set of crazy reasons. But before LA was in the news and California was in the news for all these riots that are happening there, it was in the news for education, because the Department of Education on last Tuesday rather, weighed in on this controversy about transgender athletes. I know the Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Division, is going after that. Are you guys working with the Department of Justice? Like, what is the role of the Department of Education when it comes to this whole issue of transgender? And I know a lot of it has to do with sports, but do you guys have a role in it when it comes to learning in classrooms?
Well, sure. There's the sports issue, which we weighed in on relative to California, with the track and field meet. And, the male who competed won 2 state titles, and a female would have won if she hadn't been competing against the male. We pointed out the unfairness of that, but that was fact finding. We did the research. We absolutely found that, the California was not complying with Title IX law. And when we have those findings, and we will more than likely turn that over to, the Department of Justice for, investigation. So, but Title IX was set up to protect women, offer them and to make available to them equal opportunity in sports or education. But that's now, they're being deprived again.
Yeah.
And so when we find schools and we investigate and we find Title IX violations, whatever they are, that is against the law. I mean, to all things, even reporting them to, accreditors of higher institutions to say these institutions are not complying with Title IX law. They're breaking the law, and you as an accreditor should take a look at that.
You guys have made higher education a priority, going after these universities, these elite universities mostly, because they've allowed this anti-Semitism to fester on their campuses. But I got to tell you, Secretary, how you guys went after Columbia was brilliant. Like, I saw this story pop and I thought to myself, this is the difference between playing chess and checkers. And let me read the headline to you. It says, Education Department threatens Columbia University's accreditation, invoking anti-discrimination laws. What I mean by this is you guys basically realize that in their accreditation is the key to everything. And that if you can go after the accreditation and get them on a violation of that because they've allowed anti-Semitism to fester on their campuses, then you've really kind of gone at the, as Kamala Harris would call it, the root cause. Walk me through the strategy here, because I literally, when I saw that pop, I said, I cannot wait to talk to Secretary McMahon, because this is so brilliant how you're going after the issue.
Well, we have talked to Columbia, and Columbia was one of the first universities that we sat down with. I met with Katrina Armstrong, who was then the acting president, on the campus at Columbia, and we talked through our concerns relative to anti-Semitism, which was the major flag for us, at the very beginning. And the president campaigned on that issue, that he was not going to tolerate anti-Semitism on college campuses. But it was more than just about anti-Semitism. It was discrimination in general. It was how students are vetted that are coming on campus, how the teachers are vetted. I mean, when I think Harvard's foreign population of students is about 27%. I'm not sure exactly of the population at Columbia, but how do these students come on campus? Are they there to learn? Are they there to be disruptive? And I think we have to make sure of what's coming in, to those college environments. And that was one of the challenges that we have talked to, both universities about. And then we wanted to make sure that we were covering all the steps. So we did provide the accreditor of Columbia with our fact finding that said they were in violation of Title IX and they were breaking the law, and therefore the accreditor should look at that and be sure that the accreditations remained in place, really keeping pressure to make sure that those violations were stopped. It's putting teeth into the measures that you are talking to these universities about, because they accept federal funding.
Right.
And
see, that's the brilliance of it, though.
Yes.
That's why you're so, I'm sorry. I just love how brilliant this was, because you guys basically said, we're not just going to have a dialogue and hope you fix it. We're going to go after your accreditation. And that's got to scare them in a way that no one else has gone after them about.
No, and I will say that we've had great cooperation, with Columbia. We've been sitting down with them. I've had a meeting now with Claire Shipman, who is the current acting president, and I think we're progressing in a good way for a resolution with them to change a lot of the bad habits, if you will, and bad policies that they had, and they're certainly agreeable in a lot of the issues that we've been discussing with them. We did bring up the accreditation issue because that was something that needed to be put on the table. So I think it's been a good effort, back and forth.
So it's you mentioned anti-Semitism, discrimination. What about the DEI policies, the diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is that part of the discussion to say, guys, federal funding isn't here to fund your left-wing woke causes. It's to advance research or to get more kids to learn. Yes,
and universities are responding well, and that they've taken DEI out of their policies, that they've closed DEI offices. They do want to provide counseling, but a lot of the DEI work that they were doing was clearly, diversity and equity and inclusion, you would think, has a great title. Doesn't that sound wonderful? In point of fact, it just wasn't operating that way. It was really segregating more. And when you're teaching and you're looking at one group of students as being oppressed and another group of students as being the oppressors, and that's the way you're approaching these topics, that's just wrong. And so we really wanted to make sure that, those colleges and universities accepting federal funding, this cannot be part of their curriculum, not only at higher ed, but also, in K through 12.
When we started this conversation, we were talking about sending the assets back to the states. When you took this job, I honestly can't think of another cabinet secretary in the history of the United States who took a job to say, my job is to put myself out of a job.
Yes.
The
right? President told me I'd be successful when I fired myself.
But you're a business person. You have a very successful business history. And I thought to myself, how weird is it when you get hired to fire yourself?
Well, and I talked to the president when he asked me about being the Secretary of Education. I was very flattered, very honored to serve. But I did point out to him, I said, I don't come from the world of education. I've never been a superintendent or professor. He did know that I had my certificate to teach when I graduated from college. I'd majored in French. I served on the Board of Education in Connecticut, and I also served on the Board of Trustees for Sacred Heart University for 16 years. So it's not that I was devoid of any education background, but he said to me, look, I'm not looking for someone to come out of the education department. I need a business executive, a business manager, a leader who can understand how to deconstruct this department, making sure that all of the services get covered, that students get what they need, that education is returned in full, to the states, so that those who are closest to the student can make the best decisions for their education. He said, because I want education in the United States. I want the United States to be the leader in the world in education, not where we are now, woefully close to the bottom.
Yeah. Well, Secretary McMahon, I appreciate you being with us, and the best of luck in putting yourself out of a job.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet, ma'am. All right, guys, thanks for being with us. We've got a great week as ahead. Award-winning journalist Cheryl Atkinson, Newt Gingrich is here. We've got an amazing panel with Batya Ungar-Sargon. It's going to be awesome. Hit the notification button, subscribe, go to SeanSpicer.com to stay up to date with everything for free. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.